Hello, welcome again to another video. Can anyone remember the Escort XR3? Beautiful Ford Escort XR3. Here it is. Now, I say they're beautiful, it doesn't look so beautiful at the moment, but in the 80s, this was the car that everybody wanted. This was the car to be seen in, and well, I didn't have one of these. I had a Cortina Mark IV, and I had white wall tyres, and I had a number plate on it which was Man 666. It was an Isle of Man, a Manx number plate called Man 666, but this is the car everybody wanted. And the thing is, at that time, we're talking about the 80s there, I would hire cars like that in the 80s from various sojourns to London, and they're really fast. I think it was a 1.6 injection, really fast. I'm surprised they're still around. Sometimes on the Ford rallies you can see them. Now, the reason I mention that, of course, is that that was the 80s, the 1980s. Now it's the 2020s, I suppose, and these aren't the roaring 20s as they would have been in 1920. These are times for desperate measures. These are the times where you can't put your heating on without worrying about what it'll cost. That wasn't the case in the 80s. These are the times where nobody with a realistic income, say around 30 grand, can afford to buy a house. That wasn't the case in the 80s. These are the times when young people who would normally be leaving home in their early middle 20s have got to stay at home till their 30s and 40s. Wait till the parents pop the fucking clogs and inherit the house because no one can buy a house. In the 80s, I bought a house in 1984 which cost £15,000. It was only a small one in an area called Mossley in Greater Manchester, or as they say it locally, Mosley. But they also say buzz in that area instead of bus. They say I'm going to catch a buzz. Anyway, that's another matter. They said that in the 80s and they still do. So yeah, in the 80s you could buy things. Your money went further in your pocket, because at that time, when I bought a house for £15,000, that house would probably now be worth £150,000. And at that time, I was probably earning about £200 a week in 1984. So that's the mid-80s, I was earning £200 a week, and I bought a house for £15,000. And I struggled a bit to get by, you know, I had a little mortgage and struggled a bit. Now, if that was the equivalent times now, that means that the house has gone up to £150,000 to buy. That means that someone would have to have an income to be comfortable of mental arithmetic. I couldn't do that in the 80s and I can't do it now. So £200 a week, that would be £10,000 a year to buy a £150,000 house. So I'd have to be earning £100,000 a year now. So who does that? I was 18 at the time, so who at 18 earns 100 grand a year? Just means that everything is impossible to get by. It's squeezed everyone out of the housing market. And some people still talk a good game, you know, about, oh, if you save this and do that and buy half a house, or fucking rent half a house with your brother and, you know, buy 4 bricks if you're in London, buy a garage and have it converted, or live under someone's fucking stairs. But it's still shit because of greed. You know, we're in late stage capitalism now, so a lot of people have had these houses that have gone up in value exponentially, and that's good for them. That's good if you're 50 something like me, but it's not good if you're at the bottom of the pile. So all you can do now is rely on handouts or the bank of mum and dad. It's just crazy times. So while I was swanning around in the 80s having foreign holidays, you know, I remember there was a year, I think it was 1990, I went to Tenerife 4 times in 1 year. These were really brilliant times, and it's hard for the youth of today, it's hard for the youth of today to imagine how good that was, because there was spare money. These are really good times, and abundant money, you know, really quality times. You could afford a house, you could afford to go on holiday, you could afford to heat the fucking house, you could afford anything. And now it's just gone. And the trouble is, these times needn't be like this. This is the point I'm making in this video. It's actually mismanagement that's made everything like this. It's the inability for these fucking psychopaths in government to manage things properly that's made things like this. If it wasn't for them, we'd be okay. If it wasn't for them and their globalistic pursuits, the World Economic Forum pursuits, and the so-called Great Reset, which will actually knacker everyone and destroy the middle class, squeeze the middle class. If it wasn't for them, we'd all be okay. They're just taking us into, what's the Richard Littlejohn phrase, to hell in a handcart. And that's the problem. That's the problem we're facing now. We're being orchestrated into a situation that nobody wants, and it's to the detriment of everyone. And what can we do? Well, nothing really. We just have to stop voting for these people. Voting won't change anything. If you think that voting Labour or Conservative is going to change anything, it's not, because you're voting for the same kind of people. You're voting for shills who pander to the agenda, members of the World Economic Forum. That's why there's no difference between Jacinda Ardern or Rishi Sunak or Justin Trudeau or Boris Johnson or anyone you can mention. All these leaders are shills for the World Economic Forum, and they're taking us over a precipice. Now, that wasn't happening in the 80s, but it's happening now. So there's nothing we can do. We need an entirely new system. Russell Brand talks very much more eloquently than I do about all this, so it's good to head over, as they say, to his channel on Rumble, because he can't say much on YouTube, because obviously YouTube's part of the agenda, and you get striked. I know it should be struck. You get struck off, and if you say anything slightly wrong, you know, like 2-3 years ago, nobody could say anything about the pandemic, but they can say it now, because obviously stuff's come out about the jab and myocarditis and all that kind of stuff with Pfizer and Moderna. So everybody knows it now. It's a shame not everybody knew it in March 2020. Then we wouldn't have been pulled into this bullshit. But of course, the point of this video is to compare the 80s to now, and to be honest, they were just good times. The music was better. I know older people always think that their 20s were the best times ever, but truly, I think if you did a comparison of standards of living, quality of life, ability to buy things, on any scale, the 1980s and probably to about 1998 were probably the best times, because you were looking at 1998 when someone like the reptile Tony Blair got in, deep level Satanist. So he destroyed things further with this immigration crisis that he kicked it all off, that we're now experiencing, and that goes on unabated. So things like that, we're all fucked actually, and that's because of the controllers who are shoehorned into place. If you think this is a democracy, it isn't. It's a faux democracy. It's a fake democracy. You put your little cross on a sheet and you get the same bag of shit arguing with each other across an arena when they're all really going in the same direction. So voting doesn't do it. Voting just gives you the illusion of democracy and the idea that you're making a choice. Well, you're not. You're making a choice between A and A. A bit like Russia, when they have a vote, you get the same party, and the same in China. Well, we're going into very hard times, and these aren't going to be anything like the 80s. It's going to get worse. We just see what happens in winter. You've got people dying now because of the state injectables and what people have done to them, and the hell that's caused. Well, now we're going to have the heating bills, food shortages, power blackouts. They'll blame it on Ukraine. It was nothing to do with that. So here we go. And of course all this is heading towards the Great Reset. This is where this thing is designed, planned and orchestrated to go. So I wonder if I'll be looking back in 30 years and saying the 2020s were great. I don't fucking think so. We need an entirely new system, and we need it now.